Hello, this is Ruth Bruner, and today is October 25th, 2024, and I have the pleasure of interviewing Tom Macy. Would you go ahead and state your full name?
Thomas Blair Macy.
Okay, and you live in Windsor, Colorado.
Yes.
And tell me that your place of birth and, who your parents were.
I was born in Grinnell, Iowa, to my mother and dad, Roscoe Blair Macy and Genevieve Carolyn Macy.
All right. When did your family come to this area of Windsor then from Iowa?
Do you want the whole story?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. They came in 1948, and my dad was he got out of the service in 1945. He met my mom in San Francisco when she was out there because her boyfriend that she was going to marry had been killed in the war, and they met there. And then he wasn't out of the service yet because he was still in the Navy. But she went back to Chicago where she was from. When he got out, he sent her a big, huge bouquet of flowers and restarted the relationship that he'd started back in San Francisco. And they ended up getting married. Now this is a long story, how to get out here to Colorado. He was from Iowa, she was from Cicero, Illinois. She grew up in the city where there was, she had running water, they had electric lights, it was just all real city stuff. My dad grew up in the middle of Iowa in a little farming community called Linville, and they had services there as well. But they ended up getting married, and in Cicero, and then he took his wife, my mother, to a little town called Searsboro, which was, they moved into a 2-room house, 1 room upstairs, 1 room downstairs. The running water was you had to run outside to a pump and get water out of the pump by hand to get back inside, and you could pour water in the sink, do whatever you wanted to do with it. And when you were done, you drained the sink, and it didn't go into the sewer, it went into a bucket. You had to run outside and pour the water out and bring the bucket back in.
Lots of running water.
Yeah, running water. And they had their toilet was outside. It was one of the privies outside, which the old-time Windsorites had that as well, but that's what they had, an outdoor privy. My mom, like I said, grew up in the city, so that was kind of roughing it for her. Then that was in 1948, the big January, I think. And then my dad decided he worked for my uncle out there for part of a year, and then he decided he wanted to go do something. He loved the outdoors. He wanted to do something outdoorsy and in the wild kind of thing. So he found a resort that was for sale up in Canada and took his wife, who was from the big city, took her up into this resort that he wanted to buy. He thought it sounded like a really cool deal. It was out in the middle of the forest, and when my mom's way she describes it was when she walked into the area where the resort was, she met the family, and they were sitting around a campfire outside. It looked like they'd gone back into the Stone Age. And the kids running around half undressed, dirty, and just around a campfire. And she told her husband, my dad, that no way was she going there after growing up in Cicero, and that if he's going to go there, he's going by himself. So they were going to go back and talk about it, back to Iowa and talk about it. But before they could make a decision, my grandfather contacted him and says, "Don't do anything hasty." It was through a telegram. I've got a proposal for you. And he'd been working, my grandfather, my dad's father, had been working at a newspaper in Iowa, in Des Moines, and came across a small town in Winton, Colorado that had a newspaper for sale. And contacted Blair, and they talked through the details, and they both decided to come out here, both couples, my grandfather and grandmother, my mom and dad, and they bought the Windsor Beacon in August of 1948. 1948. They bought the Windsor Beacon.
So that's, because I remember Blair Macy was very famous as the publisher and owner, both,
Yeah.
right? An
Yep.
editor and
Yeah.
a one-man show, or how many
Well,
man show was it?
It was, he was the editor, and back then when my grandfather was the editor, publisher of the whole thing, and it was a two couple, it was my grandfather, my grandmother, my dad, and my mom that ran the business, and they had to attend meetings during the week, like school board meetings, town board meetings, and other things, and between the four of them, they put out the weekly paper. My grandfather died in I think 1956 or 57, and so then my dad took over the paper, became the publisher editor, and his boys, myself, Mark, and my younger brother Tony, would be. We were moved into part of the business as well, going down and cleaning things out and running a printing press and doing different odd jobs around the shop. So it was from that time on until my parents sold it in 1974. It was a family.
It was for that long. Okay, so did your grandfather buy it from Roy Ray, or who did
That's
you buy
what I believe it was Roy Ray.
Yeah, was it, and it was called the Windsor Beacon, or you named it that because it had been.
I think it was
Poudre
called
Valley.
Windsor Beacon at that point, but it had been called the Poudre Valley before that.
Yeah.
Sometime before that, it had been called the Poudre Valley.
Okay, so where was the building located that was the Windsor Beacon?
Between 3rd and 4th Streets on Main Street on the south side.
4th and 5th, yeah, just like 2 doors down from the bike shop, or
Yeah,
right
yeah.
down, right there on the south side.
Yeah.
What was the building like that you remember inside?
Well, it used to be a bank. First of all, it was a bank. So when you walked, my dad turned the very front of it into an office area where there was a receptionist, and they could have like a little office. They could meet people, talk to people out there. You walk through the doors into the back, and that's where the big, huge printing press was, where they used to print the newspaper on site.
Oh, they did. Wow.
And they'd have the printing presses for like little printing jobs, like checks and business cards and things people wanted to have done. So that was in the back, and they had all kinds of equipment, like for cutting, a huge cutting machine. Some people talk about these little desktop cutting machines where you cut a roller, or use a little handle to go up and down to cut your paper. They had a paper cutting machine that they could cut a ream, 500 sheets of paper at one time, and it was like a 5-foot handle with a weighted blade that was about maybe 2.5 to 3 feet long and sharp, and you'd pull it down with this thing, and it just cut the whole ream, a big, huge stack of paper, and pull it back up, and you'd have it cut.
Was that what they actually used for the newsprint paper?
That was more for just print jobs.
For print jobs, okay. Yeah. So it was different quality and thicknesses of paper.
Yeah, different purposes. The paper that the newspaper came in reams of paper that it was in big, huge boxes. I don't know the size. From what I remember, it was like 4 foot by 5 foot or something like that. Huge sheet, whose boxes that the paper company would deliver, and they'd have stacks of these papers in the back. And then they would Wednesday. Printing the newspaper was a 2-day job. And I would do the first day. As I got into high school, they let me run the machine. The first day on Wednesday, you'd go through, and it would be all these papers would be stuck on top, and you would run them. You'd feed them into the machine, and the machine would print all on one side. You'd print the newspaper, and you'd go out onto another bed, and just sit there. Then on Thursday, you take all those sheets that you printed on Wednesday, and you'd print the reverse side, and you do the same way. You'd feed it these huge sheets into the machine. It would go through one at a time, and it would, instead of stopping on this platform on the Wednesday, it would actually take it into a whole other machine that would fold it, cut it, and when it came out, it was a nice folded 8-page newspaper.
So was it usually 8 pages?
I think I have to go back. I have to go back and look at it, something like that.
But it was a good sized newspaper for a town, and that was they started in 48, And
Yeah.
then by
Well, it was
how old were you by the time when you were in high school? What year did you graduate from high school?
I graduated in 1966, and
So you'd been working there for.
I worked there from 19. Well, we were kids. We had to go in and sweep the floor, wash the cups, do things just around to keep it clean. But when I got to be, like I say, high school, they let me actually run the machine. So 1960, 61, 62.
Okay. So did they have to replace the machines, repair the machines?
They had to repair it. They had I took a trip we took a trip up into Alaska. I went to a museum up there, and they had this machine sitting in the corner. I said, "That's a linotype." And I knew exactly what it was. Nobody had to tell me because it was the exact kind of machine my folks had back there. And a linotype was a big machine that they had these big bars of lead that my dad they would use lead, or they would put the lead through the linotype. It would come out with type. They'd use the type to print the paper, then take the old type, melt it back, and make another bar of lead for the next week. So they just reuse the lead over and over. The linotype would take this big, huge bar of lead, and it would melt it into a pot. Gradually, as you used it, it would go down, down, down as you used it. And because the linotype, my mom would sit there. That was her job, was do the linotype work. It was like a typewriter. She would type it out, and as she typed, little brass slugs, well, I don't think they call it, would come down, and you'd actually, as she typed a sentence, they would all be in one place with spaces between them, and then lead would go in and form what they call a slug. And on the slug when it came out, it would be a little piece of lead, little slab of lead that had the sentence on it, and all these things fit together to make it.
Every sentence.
Yeah.
And every line in the newspaper.
Yeah, and so they were all pushed together, and that's what formed the page of a paper.
So she typed it. You didn't have to put the letters in the machine. She typed it and it made it.
Yeah, because the little brass pieces were already in the machine. So when you type an A, the A came down, and the B came down. Whatever it was she was typing come down. All the letters would come down as she typed it. And when she was done, it would all go back up into the machine where it came from. Wow. And that was a linotype. And if something went wrong, like you asked the question, maintenance, that's what my dad would have to do. He'd have to fix it so that everything worked right, and if something didn't, he'd have to research it and figure it out, and all that had to be working right for the paper to come out.
Because people wanted their newspaper. The
On
Windsor
Thursday
Beacon,
morning.
Thursday morning. I remember they'd be lined up at the post office.
Yep.
That's how you picked up your paper, was in the mailbox.
And I don't remember when, but that whole process changed. Well, the linotype didn't change, but the printing press changed when they went to offset printing. It got to be too expensive to use these huge printing machines that took up so much space in the building. They got rid of it and went to, they would print off, my mom would do all the linotype work, they would lay out the sheets, and then they would just use the machine to go through, and they'd print one copy of the newspaper, each page, take it over to some place in Boulder, and they would print the newspaper for them. They'd come back and pick it up, and like for Thursday morning, they would pick it up and ship them out.
Wow. So what kind of education background did your dad have and your mother to help them know how to do that?
Well, my dad, nothing, I thought that he might have majored in journalism, but he just got a BA from Grinnell College. I did some research because I knew he might be talking about this. He got a Bachelor of Arts from Grinnell College or Grinnell University in Des Moines, in Grinnell, Iowa. And so that was the education. He was in a band. He loved music, so he played in a band, which had nothing to do to help him with this job here. But he played in the Hal Hardin Orchestra. And then my mom, she just graduated from high school, took some gourmet cooking classes outside of that, and some art classes, and then went to work for a public service company in northern Illinois, public service company, for 6 years, 1940 to 1946, and that was just high school, and that was her education. but she was very, did a lot of she was a very smart lady and could do, did all the proofreading and double checked what Blair wrote and made sure it was right.
She double checked him. That's cute.
Yeah.
That's cute. So, I think, well, today's 2024. How many years since then? Almost 100, or, in that area. How has it changed? Like your dad was born in 24, or when was your dad born?
My dad was born in 1917. My mom was born in 1921.
Okay, so over 100 years. So, how would you say that the newspaper business changed even in your lifetime or in theirs before that?
My mom wrote a little history on the business, the changes in the newspaper, and it was kind of an interesting transition. When they took over the business, there were the big headlines were like, so and so had dinner with so and so. Somebody who went on a vacation to somewhere with their family to see someone came home. It was all small town, what's going on, what's happening in the town. As the town grows, she said, the newspaper has to change along with what's going on, and there's more activity, more news, more things happening, and so you get to where less and less it becomes who does what with so and so, as to what's going on at a higher level, and that's one of the big changes. There was a Mrs. Dare that used to have, and it was one of the last people that had the visit
She always contributed the social column.
Yeah, the social column, and that was really for the old timers. For some of the people that were there, it was important to maintain the social kind of aspect of it.
Well, they used to publish the police report.
Well, they do the police report. Yeah.
Yeah. Did they? Your parents did that too, where they would go down.
Yeah,
they would go down to the police station, Tuesday or Wednesday before the paper came out, and read all the police reports and then summarize them, or.
Yeah. That was one of the things they had to do. Yeah.
Okay, and they went to school board meetings. Always report on this.
Town board meetings. Yeah.
Because we don't have as easy access as we used to in some ways, even with all the new internet, to just somebody's eyes and ears on the street.
Well, there were executive sessions that even the newspaper couldn't go to, but generally that was the big thing. And
that's how we knew. And
people wanted to get the newspaper to find out what was going on. Now we have the internet. That was the big change, was when we, as my brothers and I were getting older and graduating, going off to college and graduating from college, they wanted to have us take over the newspaper business. And none of us, we saw how hard our parents worked, and there was no way that any of us really wanted to work that hard. My dad, if he ever had a vacation, it had to be Thursday afternoon and Friday, because Saturday started the next week. And so there was we didn't go on any real big vations.
What dedication that is. What dedication.
And so we didn't want it. And then shortly after that, it became clear that digitally everything was going to the internet, and the printed press was going to be a really hard thing to maintain. That was long after we decided not to do it. My dad actually sold to another company, and sold out to another company
Utah,
to take it
wasn't
over.
It?
Yeah.
That owned several small town newspapers.
Yep.
I mean, I know in the 70s we had Gib Green, and he was publisher of of the Eaton paper, Windsor Beacon, and the same company owned those. So.
Yeah, and it was the same. It was they got out at the right time, I think. But they went from here to Keensburg and started the Keene Valley Sun, or took it over and built it up into a paper that could be sold. And
yeah. So one more question about newspapers, because I still miss having a local newspaper. What was the town size like when they moved here to when you graduated from high school?
I don't remember how big it was I don't know how big it was when they moved here, but it was. I remember then it was like circulation. It was like 1,200 newspapers or something, and that was to everybody. And
how big was your graduating class?
66.
And that was in
1966.
Yeah. Okay. Let's talk a little bit what was life like in 1966 in Windsor. What do you remember about where the high school was? What kind of events and activities you were involved in?
the high school was in the same place. There was a cafeteria between the middle school or the junior high and the high school.
On Ninth and
Yeah,
Main Street, yes.
yeah. And was it the junior high that burned down?
Yes,
The junior high burned down, but that's where that was. I think we were seniors or juniors. I can't remember the exact year, but we were there when it burned. And,
1965, if I'm correct.
65, because that could be, because 66 is when I graduated, so I remember the fire. So
that's the part of the building that's condemned, that's part of Windsor Middle School now, that's between 8th and 9th.
Yeah.
That part there.
Yeah.
So did you ever play basketball in the pit?
yeah, that's where, in middle school, that's where we played. That was,
Okay.
and that's where the team that took the world championships, they played down there.
The national championship in 24. So had they built the connection where between the junior high and the high school, there was, the new gym that's still there now, was that between the junior high and the high school, or was that not built?
I've not been in the, there was a gym on the second floor.
Okay,
And
yeah, so that you were there for that gym
Yeah.
that's still used today, and it's changed a lot. So what was your education like at Windsor High School?
I think the Windsor's education was about the best you could get. It was, I get so frustrated with kids today that mix up the nominative and the objective cases. We had to learn that inside and out. We knew what was objective, what was nominative. Her and I didn't do something. It was she and I did something. And all these people that use the wrong words. Windsor kids, when they graduated, they knew the right way to talk, and they knew the language, and they knew what was right and wrong. And the Lindblad, Mary Alice and Virginia Lindblad, they taught us well, and we knew, so that was good. We had the education, the sciences, the math. We had people from the industry that I remember Mr. Udvari that came and taught. He only taught for a year because teaching kids can be kind of a problem sometimes. But he taught us. He had us going out and doing trigonometric calculations on trees and things outside to calculate heights.
Wow.
And so the education we had prepared me anyway for going off to college and to do the work I needed to do there. I was more than ready to do that.
Did you have Mildred McCall?
Oh yeah, early, yeah.
And then,
I remember the McCalls, Mr. McCall. He scared me to death when you had to.
I used to have his old office as my classroom in the old when middle school was up there, and that was where I had taught my gifted ed class. So everybody came in remembered Mr. McCall. So, all right. So, what did you pursue then after high school for an education? And what is your story today?
Well, when I graduated, I went off to major. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I went off and I started in psychology. I thought the mind that'd be a cool way to be, cool thing to learn about. So I went off and started in psychology. Took one class, industrial psychology. It was in my field that I'd chosen. Didn't understand a thing they were talking about in there. I couldn't. Nothing I learned anywhere prepared me for that.
Or experienced.
And I met my future. I met Sandy, my wife. I met her when I was a freshman, and we took this class together. And I remember she was next to me. She went through and like she knew all the answers. She's checking them all down, just what she was supposed to, and then she patted me on the knee and got up and left. And I said, oh, I was so upset. And I ended up finishing the test, putting it on the thing, and walking out and getting mad at it. Saw Sandy, getting mad at her, and she says, I didn't know any of those answers either. I figured it'd be easier just to go down and check and check them off however I felt. And she got a better grade than I did. And I sat and fretted.
Yeah.
So I figured no more psychology for me. So I changed it to math. I could understand math. That was so easy. The high school things we learned in Windsor prepared me for that. And I loved the math. And then as we got into the math and more into it towards the end of in the junior year, I started taking computer programming kind of classes in my sophomore year, and then junior year.
At CSU? Or?
CSU, yeah,
Yes.
Colorado State University, yeah. And then I talked with a fellow that was one of the graduate students there, and he just said, "This is the future. Computers, learn the programming. This is it." Mm-hmm. And I loved it, so I changed my major. It was mathematics with a computer science option.
Wow.
And that's what I majored in.
And you graduated in 1970 or?
1970, yeah.
Okay. And what did you pursue then, and how did you use your degree after
The
that?
Army.
The Army.
I got drafted right after.
Oh, for Vietnam.
Yeah, right. It was the Vietnam era, so I got drafted into the service, and in basic training, it was frustrating for me because I didn't want to. At that point, when you graduate, it just says, what's your purpose in life? What are you going to do? What is this all about? And I started wondering about. We'd attended church as a kid growing up. We attended the Methodist church here in town with my family, and it became a serious thing in my life, saying God is real, and Jesus is real. What did they want me to do? I mean, how can I go over there and shoot somebody? And so I thought, okay, God's not going to let me do that. He's going to keep me out from going there. But my first orders, I went to basic training, and my first orders were Fort Polk, Louisiana, which would have been infantry training, going to Vietnam. And it was like going out and yelling at God, "Why are you letting this happen?" I went out, left the barracks, and walked around. And God, what are you doing? Then I came back, pretty much. Feeling, okay, God, whatever you got, it's going to work. It's going to be okay. And I called Sandy and told her, and she was in tears, and it was an emotional time. But I said, God's going to work it out. It'll be okay. The next day, the company commander called me into his office and said, Thomas or Macy, I forget how you address. He says,
yes.
I don't know how you did this, but your orders got changed. And you're going to some place called Fort Huachuca, Arizona, and you're going to be doing computer programming and math. And so that's where I went there that was for a year and a half, well, until they gave us all early outs because the Vietnam War was winding down. I worked there for almost 14 months in Fort Huachuca with Sandy. I mean, she came out there, and it was like a civilian job, so it was...
Wow.
It was good.
Say, thank you, Jesus.
Yeah.
So what year did you and Sandy marry then?
We married in 1969.
Okay.
She put me through my last year of college.
Oh,
yeah.
Bless her heart. Yeah.
She graduated a year ahead of me, so.
Yeah, and I know, Sandy's not here, but she was very instrumental in starting a lot of programs for our youth here in Windsor too. They started the after prom party.
Yeah.
The Christmas in Windsor things, and what did you have a part in helping with that? Were you?
Oh, she enlisted me.
She got enlisted again, huh?
Yeah, but she had some really good ideas. She and there were a group of people, ladies back then, that were involved in all that. Sandy Michaels, and there was a
Chief Michael's wife.
Yeah, I can't remember all. There were some other ladies. I just can't remember all their names, but they were involved in a lot of that. The Christmas in Windsor, and then the after prom. And the after proms are always fun. Yeah. We could plan that and do all these fancy things.
And you didn't have kids then, did you?
When we first started, we didn't, but we had kids, but they were moving, they were coming into that.
You just did that as a service to our community.
Well, because it was a need. It was a need.
It was a need. There wasn't.
And we could see our kids were going to be getting that age, so we wanted to have them. And they all went through it. They all had the after prom at least, and I think
that was before it was at the summit. It was at the high school gym.
Yeah.
And it was always a theme and
themed
and very well done.
Yeah, and I think Rachel, our daughter, middle daughter, I think she, like her senior year, they moved out. They changed. They went somewhere else. So I don't think Adam. I don't think he was. Yeah. I don't remember if he was in that or not. I just don't remember what year we stopped.
Yeah, I think so. They took it over. So, do you know about your extended family, your children, and do all of them still live here in Windsor, or? your brothers and
Yeah,
family? It's a big question.
When I got out of the army, I went to work for Kodak as well
Okay,
in
that's
Rochester.
what you did. Oh, okay.
And then and that was another God thing where they told me when I got hired there would be no way I'd come back to Windsor. My job was in Rochester, and and so for 2 years we kept thinking. Sandy's mom was really sick, and we wanted to come back here to be with her, and but then it didn't look like it was going to happen. So we were talking, praying with God. What do you want? Is this going to be what do you want us to do? And it was like, okay, well, we're okay. Whatever you want is what we'll do. So we'll be happy here. So we started looking we lived in apartments for 2 years, a year and a half, just 2 years, because we thought we'd be coming back here. We started looking for a house, and within about 3 or 4 weeks, my boss called me into his office and said, "Tom, I don't know about this, but a job opened up in Colorado if you want to go." And so we jumped on the chance. Said, "Yeah, God, thank you for doing this." And we took the job and came back to Windsor. So that's where my oldest daughter was born in the Army. My middle daughter was born in Rochester. Our son was born here. And we thought, well, I think we're done moving. And so we stayed in Windsor, and that's where our kids were raised, was here in Windsor. And we had Sarah, our oldest, Rachel, our middle daughter, and Adam, our son, was the youngest. Rachel now works as a nurse in Fort Collins. Adam works he does contract programming as well as works for another company that they use all his software. He's followed his dad in doing software work, and he lives in Timnath and does work all around for people all around the world, but mainly a big company that's centered out of Arizona. He does work for them. That's his main job. And my daughter and her husband is a pastor in Indiana, outside of Indianapolis. She was the head of children's ministry in Indiana for Southern Baptists there until just recently, and there was some financial issues, and she figured she could let other people take over that work, and she's now teaching in an inner city school.
Good for her. Now, some people who haven't lived here since the 70s or whatever would not remember the Macy's place, or, well, where Macy's place is now on Main Street. Is that where your house was, and then you have a pumpkin farm behind it?
Yeah. Right on if you go by the north side of Macy Place, that's where Macy Place was our pumpkin farm.
Okay, and your house was located
on the north side of Ash.
Okay.
Ash Street was where our house was, and and that was that way until 19. We built the building in 2000. 1999, 2000, so until 1998, I guess. We were doing Head to Pumpkin Farm.
So, was that the house you moved into when you moved with Kodak? The one there, or not right away?
Well, yeah, it is. Yeah, we did move into that house. That was 1974. We came back from Rochester. And if you remember, that's when I said my parents sold the Beacon and left. They moved to Keensburg, so we bought the house from them.
Oh, it was theirs. Okay, before that. Because the town, Windsor Main Street, you weren't here, but your parents were when it didn't go through on 69. They dug Main Street through